cool. Well, see, I think that's great. 'Cause,
In Hollywood, few stars guard their personal lives as carefully as Tom Cruise. While he's known for pushing limits on screen, off-screen, he's always kept certain parts of his life, especially his relationship with his daughter Suri, firmly out of the spotlight. But during one recent interview, something unexpected happened. A simple conversation turned into a moment that fans weren't supposed to notice until they did. It wasn't Tom Cruise who sparked the reaction. It was Suri. And what she said, whether intentional or not, quickly caught attention online. Within hours, viewers were replaying the clip, analyzing every word, every expression, and every pause. Because sometimes the most revealing moments aren't the loud ones. They're the quiet comments that slip through when no one's expecting them. And this one may have said more than intended. Born into a global obsession. Back in the early 2000s, the relationship between Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes didn't just make headlines. It completely dominated the conversation. What started as a Hollywood romance quickly turned into a full-blown cultural moment, and by May 2005, things reached a level nobody saw coming. That was when Tom appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show and delivered a moment that would go down in pop culture history. He jumped on Oprah's couch, shouting his love for Katie with an energy that felt almost unreal. It wasn't just surprising, it was unforgettable. Even years later, that clip still lives rent-free in people's minds as one of those rare, frozen-in-time moments. Just 5 months later, the story took another major turn. The couple announced they were expecting a child, and suddenly the attention doubled. What had already been intense media coverage turned into something close to a global obsession. The paparazzi weren't just following a celebrity couple anymore. They were chasing what felt like America's version of a royal baby. Part of the fascination came from how unexpected the pairing was in the first place. He was the action superstar from Top Gun. She was the girl next door from Dawson's Creek. That unlikely mix created a kind of curiosity that pulled people in. And before the baby was even born, the world was already watching. When their daughter, Suri Cruise, arrived in April 2006, the hype reached another level entirely. She was instantly labeled one of the most famous babies on the planet, and it wasn't an exaggeration. Every detail, from her name to her appearance, became a topic of conversation. Tom later shared that the name Suri had been chosen long before they even knew the baby's gender. The couple had gone through naming books together, both landing on the same choice. Learning afterward that it meant red rose only made it feel more perfect. But just as the public's curiosity peaked, Tom and Katie made a surprising move. They disappeared from view. For the first few months of Suri's life, there were no official photos, no public appearances, nothing. That silence only made things louder. Speculation started to spread, with some even questioning whether everything was okay simply because no one had seen her. That all changed in October 2006. Instead of a casual reveal, the couple went big, landing a major cover with Vanity Fair. The shoot, captured by legendary photographer Annie Leibovitz, introduced Suri to the world in full cinematic fashion. In the images, she looked calm, comfortable, and completely at ease, as if the spotlight was something she had been born into. The response was immediate. The magazine's coverage turned into a phenomenon, with millions rushing online just to catch a glimpse. Inside, Suri wasn't just featured, she was the moment. Smiling, expressive, and completely natural in front of the camera, she seemed to step into the spotlight without hesitation. Behind the scenes, the demand for those first photos had already reached extreme levels. Reports suggested offers in the millions were on the table. But when the time came, Tom and Katie chose not to take any payment. Instead, they focused on controlling how and when their daughter would be introduced to the world. Katie later explained that the delay had nothing to do with strategy and everything to do with protecting a moment she knew she couldn't get back. She wanted time, real, uninterrupted time, with her newborn, away from the chaos. Even so, Suri wasn't completely hidden. Close friends and a few high-profile visitors had already met her, including Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, and Penelope Cruz. By the time the public saw her, she was already known within Hollywood's inner circle. Once she was introduced, there was no going back. The spotlight followed her everywhere, including her parents' lavish wedding later that year in Italy. Held at the historic Orsini Odescalchi Castle, the event brought together a guest list packed with stars, from Jennifer Lopez and Mark Anthony to David Beckham and Victoria Beckham. But not every moment behind the scenes matched the fairy tale image. Actress Leah Remini later shared a story that painted a much different picture. During a pre-wedding dinner, she recalled hearing Suri crying and eventually stepping in. According to her account, the baby had been left unsettled, with caretakers reacting in a way that felt more intense than comforting. Once Remini helped get her fed, the situation quickly calmed down. As Suri grew older, the reality of her life became clearer. From the outside, it looked glamorous, but day to day, it came with constant pressure. Katie later described how relentless the paparazzi were, even during Suri's earliest years. Simple things, like going to a park, had to be carefully planned, sometimes as early as sunrise, just to avoid attention. At first, Suri didn't fully understand what was happening. She would wave at cameras, almost treating them like friendly faces. But that innocence didn't last. As she got older, curiosity turned into discomfort, and eventually into avoidance. One moment that captured that shift came around her 3rd birthday. What should have been a simple celebration turned chaotic when paparazzi showed up in a helicopter, desperate for a photo. The disruption became so intense that authorities had to step in, forcing the family to reschedule the party entirely. By then, Suri had already started developing ways to cope. She would hide her face, turn away from cameras, or bury herself into her parents' shoulders. And when that wasn't enough, she got creative, using whatever she could to block the lens. Still, the attention never really slowed down. In 2009, another wave of headlines hit when photos showed her out with Katie wearing small-heeled shoes at just 3 years old. The reaction was immediate, with critics questioning everything from parenting choices to the message it sent. Even Manolo Blahnik weighed in, expressing surprise at the sight. In response, Katie explained that the shoes were simply for dancing, while Tom pointed out that in some cultures, similar footwear is completely normal for children. Whether people accepted that explanation or not, the narrative stuck. Over time, stories began to paint Suri as a tiny fashion enthusiast, with reports claiming her wardrobe, and especially her shoe collection, had grown into something far beyond what most kids her age would ever have. The price of being Suri Cruise. Growing up in the spotlight was never something Suri Cruise chose, and even as a small child, she made that clear in her own quiet way. While other kids might wave at cameras, Suri often did the opposite. She would stick out her tongue, throw sharp looks, and make it obvious she wasn't interested in performing for strangers with lenses. As she got older, that resistance became more direct, and one moment in 2013 captured just how overwhelming her world could be. She and her mother, Katie Holmes, were simply trying to leave a building and get into their car. But the scene outside was chaotic. Paparazzi crowded the sidewalk, cameras flashing, voices calling out. Fans pushed in too, asking for photos and autographs, blocking any clear path forward. In the middle of it all, Suri, still just a child, reached her limit. Visibly frustrated, she shouted for people to move, just trying to get somewhere safe. They eventually made it into the vehicle, but the situation didn't end there. One photographer shouted back at her, calling her names no child should ever hear. She was only 7 years old. Someone nearby stepped in and called out the behavior, but the moment stuck. It revealed a harsher side of fame, one where even a child could become a target simply for refusing to play along. Despite that reality, Katie Holmes stayed focused on one goal, giving her daughter as normal a life as possible. Of course, normal is relative when your parents are Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, but she was determined to create something grounded, something stable. That effort led them to New York City, where they built a quieter, more private routine. The move wasn't just about a change of scenery, it was about giving Suri space to grow up outside the constant glare of Hollywood. Life in the city came with its own challenges. The attention didn't disappear, but it became more manageable. In a place where millions of people move through the streets every day, it was easier to blend in, to find moments of normalcy. Katie leaned heavily on the values she grew up with, shaping the way she raised her daughter. Family, structure, and a sense of balance became the foundation. Part of that structure came through education. Suri was enrolled at Avenues, the World School, an elite private school in Manhattan's Chelsea district. It wasn't just a school, Aman. It was an environment designed to challenge and prepare students at the highest level. Uniforms were required. The curriculum was rigorous. The expectations were high. But within that structure, Suri began to carve out her own identity. She wasn't just the child of two global stars. She was a student, learning, growing, and finding her voice. Reports even suggested she was studying Mandarin at a young age, adding another layer to an already unique upbringing. And while the paparazzi never fully disappeared, the school became something of a safe zone, a place where cameras were kept at a distance and privacy was respected more than usual. Even then, the interest never faded. Photos of Suri remained valuable to tabloids, a reminder that no matter how carefully her world was managed, the spotlight was always nearby. Still, within that pressure, there was a clear effort to build something steady. A life that, while far from ordinary, gave her room to grow into her own person, on her own terms, the beginning of the distance. Just 1 month after his high-profile split from Katie Holmes was finalized in 2012, Tom Cruise stepped into what looked like a picture-perfect dad moment. He took his daughter, Suri Cruise, to Disney's Typhoon Lagoon for a full-on father-daughter day. At the time, the images told a simple story. Smiles, laughter, water splashing everywhere. Tom tossing Suri into the air, making sure she was having the time of her life. On the surface, it looked like a normal post-divorce weekend, a dad showing up for his child. But looking back now, those photos feel different, almost like a snapshot frozen in time. Because according to reports from Us Weekly, that trip ended up being the last time the public ever saw them together. By 2016, it was widely reported that Tom and Suri hadn't been spotted in the same place since that day at the water park. Then things got even more serious. Tom took Bauer Media Group to court over a story published by In Touch Weekly that claimed he had abandoned his daughter. And during that legal battle, the conversation turned personal in a way nobody expected. Under oath, Tom admitted that his deep involvement with Church of Scientology played a role in why Katie Holmes chose to walk away from the marriage. At this point, it's almost impossible to separate Tom Cruise from Scientology. He isn't just a member, he's the face of it. And with that comes one of the church's most controversial practices, disconnection. According to insiders speaking to In Touch, Tom's life revolves completely around the church, and the fallout from that lifestyle reportedly included distancing himself from Katie, which by extension meant distance from Suri, who remained close to her mother. So what was really happening behind closed doors? Some insight came from Ron Miscavige, who claimed that Katie reached her breaking point when members of the church allegedly moved into their home. That situation only made existing tensions worse. At the center of it all was one major issue: how Suri would be raised. If she grew up fully inside Scientology, there was a real possibility she could one day be expected to disconnect from her own mother. For Katie, that was a line she wasn't willing to cross. And the story doesn't stop there. In her tell-all, Leah Remini claimed that some within the church saw Suri as incredibly significant to their future. She even suggested that certain members viewed the child in almost mythic terms, tying her to L. Ron Hubbard. Meanwhile, life around Suri came with a price tag that was anything but ordinary. Back in 2012, a divorce attorney told E! News that her monthly expenses could hit around $100,000. Private education, constant travel, and round-the-clock security all added up fast. And the security alone was on another level. According to reports from OK Magazine, Tom was allegedly spending tens of thousands every single week just to keep her protected. Katie was said to be firm on one thing. When it came to Suri's safety, there were no limits. At one point, things even started to feel like a scene out of a spy movie. There were reports of a decoy being used to throw paparazzi off track. In one bizarre incident covered by New York Daily News, photographers followed a vehicle they believed was carrying Suri. When it stopped, a girl dressed exactly like her stepped out and hid her face. Moments later, the real Suri appeared somewhere else entirely. Both girls were wearing identical outfits. Same boots, same jacket, same everything. Some believed it was a carefully planned move to protect her. Others, including sources cited by Yahoo Entertainment, suggested it might have just been a friend caught up in an unusually intense playdate. Through all of this, Katie remained steady. Reports from Hollywood Life suggested she still hoped Tom would one day step back into Suri's life in a meaningful way. Ideally, that would mean putting his daughter ahead of everything else, including his religion. But there was little expectation that would actually happen. Tom had made it clear he was fully committed to Scientology, and yet some still wondered, as one of the church's most powerful figures, could he bend the rules if he really wanted to? In 2016, he relocated to Florida, settling into a penthouse near Scientology's international headquarters. At the time, most assumed it was about staying close to the center of the organization. But according to Radar Online, there were whispers of another reason. Some believed he was quietly trying to position himself for a reunion with Suri, possibly hoping proximity to the church's leadership might give him room to navigate its strict policies. Still, nothing publicly changed. Katie kept her silence, choosing not to speak openly about Tom's relationship with their daughter. Whatever the truth was, she handled it behind closed doors. There were moments, though, when she tried. Reports claim that in 2017, she reached out to Tom in hopes of reopening communication, not for herself, but for Suri. At the end of the day, she wanted her daughter to have a real relationship with her father. But time kept moving. Milestones came and went. Birthdays passed. And according to reports from Star magazine, Tom hadn't attended one of Suri's birthday parties since she was 7 years old. For a child, that absence hits differently. Sources describe Suri as simply wanting her dad to show up. Nothing extravagant, just presence. And as the years went by, those missed moments started to carry more weight. At the same time, other reports suggested she was beginning to understand the reality of her situation. Life had settled into something stable with her mom, and the two of them had built a rhythm without him. Katie even opened up about motherhood in an interview with Town & Country, reflecting on how quickly children grow and how hard it is to let them go. It was a quiet reminder of how much she had carried on her own. By April 2016, when Suri turned 10, the pattern was already clear. She celebrated in New York with friends and family. Lunch at Tavern on the Green, followed by a fun weekend at Dave & Buster's. Everything looked joyful on the surface, but Tom wasn't there. It marked the third year in a row he had missed her birthday. Even with gifts and celebrations, insiders said what she really wanted couldn't be replaced. As the years went on, the silence between them became harder to ignore. By 2017, sources claimed Tom hadn't seen Suri in years. The relationship, at least publicly, had faded into the background of his life. And yet, there were hints that the door was never fully closed. Some reports suggested Suri had been reaching out on her own, texting, calling, trying to maintain a connection however she could. Those small efforts painted a different picture, one where, despite everything, she hadn't given up on him. Behind the scenes, there were even claims that Tom was quietly paying attention, listening to voicemails, reading messages, staying aware from a distance. But while that possibility lingered, life kept moving forward. For a time, Jamie Foxx stepped into a supportive role in Suri's life during his relationship with Katie. Their bond was kept mostly private, but insiders described him as warm, present, and deeply caring toward her. That relationship eventually came to an end in 2019, reportedly after running its course. The day the distance became clear. April 18, 2024, marked a major turning point for Suri Cruz. She officially turned 18, a milestone that, for most people, would naturally come with family, celebration, and maybe even a meaningful reunion. But that's not how this story played out. There was no sign of Tom Cruise anywhere. Instead of a flashy Hollywood-style party, Suri kept things simple in New York City. She was seen walking through the streets with a close friend, holding what looked like a birthday gift bag, heading off to celebrate in her own quiet way. A few days later, she appeared again, this time alongside her mom, Katie Holmes. The two looked relaxed, just talking, laughing, and moving through the city like any other mother and daughter. Meanwhile, Tom was thousands of miles away in London. He was deep into filming Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 2, fully locked into work mode. Around the same time Suri was stepping into adulthood, he was spotted out in London, smiling, moving freely, looking completely at ease. From the outside, there was no visible sign that his daughter's milestone birthday was even on the horizon. The timing made one thing clear: he wasn't making that trip to New York. And then came the contrast. Just 2 days after Suri's birthday, Tom showed up at Victoria Beckham's 50th birthday celebration. It was a star-packed event, filled with names like Mark Anthony, Jason Statham, Rosie Huntington-Whiteley, Eva Longoria, and Salma Hayek. And by all accounts, Tom wasn't just there. He stood out. Reports described him as the life of the party, dancing, performing splits, fully in the moment. That contrast didn't go unnoticed. While all of this was unfolding, Katie Holmes reached a breaking point with the constant speculation surrounding her daughter. In a rare move, she publicly pushed back against a report claiming Suri had received a massive trust fund from Tom upon turning 18. The claim suggested she had become financially set overnight, with structured payouts planned for her future. Katie shut it down completely. No long explanation, no drawn-out clarification, just a direct rejection of the story. And that moment said a lot. Because underneath all the headlines, rumors, and speculation, one reality has been sitting there for years. The relationship between Tom and Suri has been, for the most part, non-existent, which makes it even more striking when you look back at where things started. In the late 2000s, Suri was everywhere. She wasn't just a celebrity child, she was one of the most photographed kids in the world. Tom rarely went anywhere without her. She was constantly by his side, the center of his attention. Then 2012 happened. Katie Holmes filed for divorce, made a clean break, and moved Suri to New York City. And from that moment on, everything shifted. The public sightings stopped, the appearances together faded, and over time, the silence between father and daughter became impossible to ignore. Katie later described that period as intense, overwhelming attention, major life changes, and the responsibility of protecting a young child through all of it. Their new life in New York looked completely different. Gone were the red carpets and constant spotlight. In their place was something quieter, more controlled, a deliberate attempt to give Suri a normal upbringing. And slowly, that's exactly what happened. As the years passed, the distance between Tom and Suri only grew. Reports suggested little to no contact. And while nothing was ever fully confirmed publicly, the pattern spoke for itself. Even small details began to tell a bigger story. During her high school years, Suri appeared in a school production where her name was listed as Suri Noel, a noticeable shift from the name the world had always known. Since she didn't originally have a middle name, adopting her mother's middle name felt intentional. Not necessarily a legal change, but a symbolic one. A quiet step toward defining her identity on her own terms. Now that she's 18, that choice is entirely hers to make. And according to some reports, she may already be emotionally there. Insiders have claimed she has no interest in reconnecting with her father and has fully accepted life as it is, with one present parent. Looking back, the timeline is hard to ignore. After the 2012 split, there were only a couple of documented sightings of Tom and Suri together. One shortly after the divorce, and another in 2013 at a theme park. After that, nothing. Even Tom himself hinted at the distance during a legal deposition in 2013, acknowledging long stretches of time without seeing her. On the other side, Katie stayed consistent. She focused on building stability, making it clear that her priority was giving Suri a grounded, protected childhood. And now, years later, that foundation is showing. In June 2024, Suri stepped out for her senior prom in New York City. She looked confident, poised, completely comfortable in her own space. She was surrounded by friends, enjoying a moment that had nothing to do with fame or family drama. Her date, a fellow student, stood beside her as they took photos and moved through the night like any other teenagers marking the end of high school. At the same time, Tom was once again overseas, continuing his work. Interestingly, not long after, he was seen spending time with his son, Connor Cruz, highlighting a very different dynamic in another part of his life. And that contrast has become part of the larger story. Because at this point, the distance between Tom and Suri doesn't feel temporary. It feels established. Some insiders have gone as far as saying the separation wasn't accidental, that it was a choice shaped by priorities, beliefs, and a long-standing commitment to the Church of Scientology. Over time, that choice appears to have created a permanent divide. But here's the other side of it. Suri is no longer the little girl in paparazzi photos. She's stepping into adulthood, building her own identity, and creating a life that stands on its own. And in a way, that might be the most important part of this entire story, because while the absence of a father has been a defining piece of her past, it doesn't seem to be defining her future. Tom Cruise's daughter accidentally says too much in this interview. By now, Tom Cruise is almost synonymous with the Mission Impossible franchise. On screen, he's the man who always finds a way to complete the mission, no matter how dangerous or complicated it gets. But off-screen, there's one role that seems far more complicated, being a present father to his daughter, Suri Cruise. That contrast came into focus during a red carpet moment at the premiere of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. In the middle of all the flashing lights and press interviews, a reporter from E! News asked what should have been a simple question: what a perfect Father's Day looks like for him. On paper, it was an easy setup. Tom is a father of 3. Suri, whom he shares with Katie Holmes, and Bella Cruz and Connor Cruz, whom he adopted during his marriage to Nicole Kidman. But instead of leaning into anything personal, his answer drifted somewhere else entirely. He spoke about having fun, making movies, chasing adventure, the kind of response that sounded more like a press tour soundbite than a reflection on fatherhood. The moment felt off. For most parents, Father's Day is tied to family, connection, and time spent together. But here was one of the most recognizable fathers in the world, sidestepping the idea completely. It wasn't just vague. It felt like a deliberate pivot, and people noticed. Online reactions came quickly, especially on YouTube, where viewers picked apart the exchange. Many pointed out how a straightforward question about being a dad somehow turned into another conversation about movies. Others questioned whether he was avoiding the topic altogether. What stood out most wasn't just what he said, but what he didn't say. In that brief moment, the line between Tom Cruise, the global movie star, and Tom Cruise, the father, became even clearer. His answer stayed firmly in the world of action films and big adventures, while the subject of fatherhood remained just out of reach.